I didn't expect to find myself sitting in Sarah's office lobby that afternoon, but there I was, waiting for her to finish up a meeting. I dropped off some paperwork she'd forgotten, thinking I'd just run in, hand it over, and be back out. But that's not how it went. The lobby was quiet, a little too sterile for my liking, with the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft clicking of keyboards in the distance. I didn't mind waiting. I was used to the cold reception I got when I popped by her workplace. She'd always been distant, but lately, it felt different, like we were both on autopilot. I sank into one of the stiff chairs and pulled my phone out, trying to kill some time. That's when I heard the laughter. It was coming from the break room down the hall. It wasn't the good-natured kind. More like the kind you hear when someone's being talked about behind their back. "Did you hear Sarah call him that again?" one of the women said, her voice light but with a bite. "Mr. Sarah." I froze. Mr. Sarah? I didn't even know how to process that. Was it some inside joke? I wasn't sure, but the way they laughed, like it was some sort of joke I wasn't in on, it didn't sit right with me. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe they were just messing around. People had a way of doing that at workplaces, right? But my gut twisted. It had been a while since I felt like Sarah and I were on the same page. More and more, I was starting to feel like I was just another thing to manage in her life. Another task on her endless list. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on than I could see. As I was about to head out, Carl, one of her coworkers, wandered over. He looked me up and down like he was judging whether I belonged. "Hey man," he said with that smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You keepin' busy? Fixing cars and all that?" He slapped me on the shoulder like it was some kind of compliment, but it felt more like a dig, like he was reminding me of my place, some lowly mechanic while he worked in his shiny corporate tower. I just nodded, trying to keep my cool, but the sting was there. "Yeah, Carl, things are good." I walked out without saying much more, but the seeds of doubt had already been planted. Something was wrong. I didn't know it yet, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just seen a crack in the wall Sarah had built around us. The next few weeks were nothing but small, nagging changes. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe I was overthinking it, or maybe it was just part of the routine. But soon, I couldn't ignore it. Sarah was staying out later. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and she wouldn't be there. When I asked her about it, she'd just say she was at a client dinner or working late on some project. Nothing I could really argue with. And then there was her phone. She never used to care where I was when she checked it. But lately, it was always face down, like it was a secret she didn't want me to know. I'd come home from the shop and find her texting away, but the moment I stepped into the room, she'd flip it over or slide it into her purse. It wasn't like her, not the Sarah I knew, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just busy. Could have been nothing. The worst part was the business trips. She used to go on them a couple times a year, but now it was more often, once every couple of weeks, sometimes for just a day or two, sometimes longer. She'd come back, looking tired but always full of work stories. Never about who she'd been with or what she'd been doing. Just the usual. Deals, meetings, clients. Nothing personal. Nothing about her life outside of work. It made me feel like I was fading into the background. Then one night, over dinner, she dropped it casually. "I've got that big client dinner tomorrow," she said, pushing her food around on her plate. She was distracted, like she wasn't really talking to me. I nodded like it was no big deal. But then she added, "Tom's going to be there too. You know, my coworker? He's been working on that deal for weeks." Her eyes lingered a little too long when she said his name. Tom. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept it together. Tom had been around a lot lately, always around in the background of her work stories, always the guy helping her with this or that project. He was a decent enough guy, or so I thought. But I could hear that tone in Sarah's voice, the little spark of excitement when she mentioned him. It was a subtle thing, but it didn't sit right with me. Later that night, after Sarah went to bed, I sat in the living room, thinking. I tried to push the thought out of my head. This was ridiculous, right? I was just being insecure. I wasn't some paranoid idiot. But then, I remembered a conversation I overheard at her office a few weeks back. Tom and some of the other coworkers had been chatting by the coffee machine, and I'd caught the tail end of it. "Yeah, Tom's been working out a lot lately," one of them had said, laughing. "He's got a new workout buddy, Sarah." I don't know why that stuck with me, but it did. It wasn't just a friendly gym session. The way they said it, it sounded like something more, something private. The next few days, I dug into Sarah's schedule. I don't know why I did it, but I started looking for the inconsistencies. Her work trips, the late nights, the sudden emergencies. I went over everything, trying to find proof that I was just making all this up. But the more I looked, the more it seemed like something was off. She'd leave for a trip one day, then I'd check the calendar, and she'd be back the next day, but no mention of it before. She'd tell me one thing, but her schedule said another. The pieces didn't fit. The doubt started to eat at me, gnawing at the back of my mind. I didn't want to be the guy who doubted his wife. I didn't want to believe that Sarah could be doing something behind my back, but every little thing, her behavior, the way she spoke about Tom, the way she kept things hidden, it started to add up in a way that made it impossible to ignore. I tried to push it down. I told myself I was being stupid. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down I knew something was happening, and I couldn't pretend otherwise anymore. I was still trying to push it all aside, but it was getting harder every day. The more I ignored it, the louder the nagging feeling in my gut became. One Saturday, Danny called me up, asking if I wanted to do a ride along with him. It was the kind of thing we used to do back when we were younger, just a couple of guys talking shop, no real agenda. But today, something was off. Danny was one of those people who could read you like a book. He's been my friend for years, and he knew when something was wrong, even if I wasn't saying it out loud. We'd barely started driving when he turned to me, his hands tight on the wheel. "You all right, man?" he asked. His voice wasn't accusing, just casual, like he knew I was holding something back. I didn't answer right away. My stomach churned. I knew I had to say something, but I didn't want to. Not yet. "Yeah, I'm good. Just busy with work." Danny didn't buy it. He just glanced over at me, waiting. "Come on. Something's bothering you. I've known you long enough to tell when you're full of it." I swallowed hard, the words finally spilling out. "It's Sarah, man. Something's off with her." Danny raised an eyebrow, shifting gears. "Off how?" "The trips, the late nights, the phone always face down when I walk in the room. It's like she's hiding something. I don't know. I feel like I'm losing her, Danny." Danny's grip tightened on the wheel, and I could see him thinking, weighing what I was saying. "Have you talked to her about it?" I shook my head, already knowing what he was going to say. "No. I don't know what I'd even say. What if I'm just overreacting?" "You're not overreacting, but you need to talk to her. You can't just keep sitting on this shit, Mike. It's gonna eat you alive." I wanted to agree with him, but the words stuck in my throat. What if she had a reason? What if it was all in my head? What if I was just a paranoid asshole? Instead, I just shrugged, trying to brush it off. "I don't know. Maybe I'm just being stupid." Danny didn't say anything after that, and the rest of the ride was quiet. We finished the day working on a couple of cars, but my mind wasn't on the engines or the grease-streaked tools. It was on Sarah, on the distance between us. I kept telling myself I needed to confront her, but something inside me was scared. Scared of what I might find. Scared of what I might lose. That night, I did something I knew I shouldn't have. I checked Sarah's social media. It's not like I wanted to, but it was like a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. I figured it was just a quick scroll, nothing serious. But that's when I saw it. Right there in front of me, plain as day. A post of Sarah and Tom, sitting at a table in a restaurant, her laughing, leaning in just a little too close. The caption, "Great dinner with a great colleague." The way they were sitting, the way she was looking at him, it wasn't just friendly. It wasn't just work. It felt personal. Too personal. My heart dropped. That gut feeling I'd been trying to ignore? It wasn't wrong. I had no proof of what I was seeing, but in that moment I knew. The last shred of doubt I'd been holding on to vanished in an instant. I could feel the blood rushing to my face, my hands shaking. My mind screamed at me, but I couldn't move. I couldn't unsee what was right there in front of me. I put my phone down, but the image wouldn't leave my mind. I couldn't wait anymore. I had to confront her. I wasn't going to let it go on any longer. When Sarah got home that night, I was already sitting in the living room, waiting. She stepped inside, her heels clicking on the floor, but the moment she saw me, she paused. The air shifted, thick and heavy. She knew something was wrong. "Mike," she said, her voice cautious. "What's going on?" I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I saw the picture, Sarah. With Tom." Her face went pale and she stammered. "What? What are you talking about?" "The post on Instagram. You and him sitting together at that restaurant. You looked pretty cozy to me." She tried to brush it off, but her voice wavered. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Mike. It's nothing. It's just a work thing. I can't believe you're going through my social media now." I stood up, my fists clenching. "I'm not stupid, Sarah. I've been watching you. No, I've been feeling it. You've been different for months. The trips, the late nights. And now this? I can't just pretend I don't see it." She crossed her arms, defensive. "You're just being paranoid, Mike. Nothing's going on. You're making something out of nothing." It was like a switch flipped inside me. All the fear, all the anger I'd been holding back. Everything came rushing out. "You've been lying to me for who knows how long, Sarah. I'm not stupid. I know something's going on, and I'm done pretending I don't see it." She took a step back, her face flushed, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she just stared at me, her eyes shifting away. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I couldn't take it anymore. "I need some space, Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Without waiting for her to respond, I grabbed my jacket and stormed out. The cold air hit me like a slap in the face, but it was better than the suffocating weight of that house. I walked for what felt like hours, the world spinning around me, my heart pounding in my chest. The truth was clear now. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore it any longer. Sarah might be cheating on me, and I didn't know how to handle it. But I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. Something had changed. Something had broken. I didn't want to do it. I didn't. But once that doubt takes root, there's no shaking it loose, no matter how much you try. So, the next day, when Sarah was out running errands, I did what I never thought I'd do. I went through her purse. It felt wrong, like a line I shouldn't be crossing, but I didn't care anymore. The minute my hand brushed against the side pocket, I knew exactly what I was looking for. Her second phone. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach that it was there, and when I pulled it out, it felt heavier than it should have. It was an old model. Nothing fancy. Nothing that screamed, "I'm hiding something." But the minute I turned it on, I knew I was about to find exactly what I was looking for. I took the phone back to the workshop. I needed some space, some quiet. I didn't want to do this in the house, not where I'd have to face Sarah afterward. The silence of the shop wrapped around me as I opened the texts. My hands shook, but I forced myself to scroll. At first, it was what I expected, casual check-ins, business stuff. But then the tone shifted. I saw Sarah's name pop up, followed by Tom's. I didn't even have to read long before I knew. These weren't just work conversations. They were personal, intimate. One text from Tom read, "You looked so good last night, baby. Can't wait to do it again." My stomach twisted. I didn't even want to look at the next one, but my eyes went right to it. "I love the way you feel in my arms. Let's be careful though. Don't want to get caught." It hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd suspected it, but seeing it in black and white, knowing they'd been careful, planning this behind my back, it shattered something deep inside me. I had no words for what I was feeling, just this gut-deep ache, a hollow feeling in my chest that wouldn't go away. I kept scrolling, unable to stop myself. Message after message. Flirtations. Things that were meant for someone you loved, someone you trusted. I didn't want to keep going, but I had to. I snapped a few pictures of the screen, proof. Something concrete I could hold on to, even if I didn't know what to do with it yet. I felt numb, like I was outside of my own body, reading words that belonged to someone else's life. But it was my life, my wife, my world. I set the phone down, my hands still trembling. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, just breathing in the silence of the shop. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't anything yet. I was just empty, like someone had pulled the rug out from under me, and I didn't know how to get my footing back. I thought about Sarah, about how she must have felt, what she'd been thinking when she sent those messages. I wanted to scream, to punch something, but I didn't. I stayed calm. I told myself it wasn't the time to lose my cool. Not yet. I couldn't let her know I'd found the phone. Not yet. Not when I didn't know what to do with it. I had a plan now, or at least I was starting to. I'd gather more evidence, more proof, and then I'd confront her. But I couldn't let her see that I knew. Not until I had everything I needed. I stuffed the phone back into the purse, trying to make it look like nothing had changed. I wiped my hands on my jeans, standing up to walk around the shop for a few minutes to shake off the weight of it all. The quiet hum of the engine in the corner, the grease stains on the workbench, the tools hanging from the wall. All of it felt surreal, like I was living in a dream, only it wasn't one I ever wanted to be a part of. Eventually, I headed back to the house. My chest was tight, and my head was spinning, but I wasn't going to let it show. Not yet. Couldn't. I walked in, pretending everything was fine, but all I could think about was the phone, the texts, the lies that had been right under my nose for months. Sarah looked up from the couch as I entered, and her face softened. She smiled like she didn't know the storm that was brewing in my chest. I nodded, but I didn't say anything. I just kept walking, pushing down the anger and the betrayal, keeping it buried for now. I wasn't going to confront her right away, not until I had everything in place. The truth was clear now, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next day, I met Danny at the shop. I hadn't told him everything, but he'd known something was off. The tension between Sarah and me wasn't exactly a secret, and Danny was a guy who could sense when something was wrong. When I walked in, he didn't wait for me to speak. "So what's the deal, man?" His tone wasn't exactly gentle, but it wasn't harsh either. Just a guy wanting to know what his friend was going through. I leaned against the workbench, avoiding his eyes. "I found the phone." Danny's eyebrows shot up. "The phone?" He stepped closer, his face hardening. "Are you serious? She's been cheating on you?" I nodded, and for the first time, I let the anger I'd been holding inside spill over. "Yeah, she's been sleeping with Tom, her coworker, for months. She's been lying to me, and I've been too damn blind to see it." Danny clenched his fists, his face flushing red. "I'm pissed off for you, Mike. I don't care who they are. That's bullshit. But listen, you've got to be smart about this." I knew he was right. I wanted to confront Sarah right then, throw everything in her face, and burn the whole thing down. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to know exactly how deep this went. "I don't want to just go in guns blazing," I said, pacing around the shop. "I need to know everything. I need to catch her. Catch them at their game." Danny's eyes narrowed. "All right, so what's the plan?" I stopped pacing and looked him in the eye. "I'm going to follow her. I've already got enough to know she's lying. But I need more. I need proof that she's been seeing him on these trips. I'll get pictures, documents, whatever it takes." Danny let out a long breath. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mike, but I get it. I'll help if you need me, but don't do anything stupid." I could see he was concerned, but I wasn't about to back down. "I'm not stupid. I'm just not letting her walk all over me anymore. I'll handle it." That night, Sarah mentioned another business trip she had coming up. A quick trip to Denver to meet with a client. It was like a gift. I could already feel the itch to follow her, to catch her in the act. The next morning, I woke up early, gathered a few things, my camera, my phone, and a pair of dark sunglasses, and followed Sarah to the airport. I stayed far enough back so she wouldn't see me, keeping my distance as she checked in. It wasn't easy, but I was determined. I had to be. I watched her board the plane, her shoulders stiff, like she had no idea I was following her every move. As soon as the plane took off, I felt a rush of adrenaline. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about me, about proving to myself that I wasn't some fool who couldn't see what was right in front of him. When Sarah landed in Denver, I kept my distance, waiting until she left the airport to follow her in my car. I saw her get into a cab, and I made sure to keep a few cars back, trying to blend in with the traffic. After a short ride, the cab pulled up to a hotel, one I recognized from the time Sarah had talked about her business trips. I parked a few blocks down and watched her check in, but I wasn't done yet. I waited until the evening, when I knew she'd be in the hotel room. Then I took the chance. I slipped into the lobby, wearing a baseball cap to hide my face, and I grabbed a few shots of her leaving the building with Tom. They were laughing, walking close, like they didn't have a care in the world. The photos were crystal clear. She was with him, no mistaking it. I kept my distance, snapping pictures whenever I could, until they got into a hotel elevator. I felt like an intruder in my own life, but I couldn't stop. I needed to know the truth. I had to have the proof, the evidence that would show me once and for all that I wasn't crazy. Over the next couple of days, I followed them in different cities: Chicago, New York, San Francisco. Every time I found them together, always in the same pattern: late dinners, casual touches, the way she looked at him. I was drowning in the knowledge of it all. But I wasn't done yet. I had to know more about Tom, about the guy who'd been screwing my wife behind my back. So I started checking his social media. It wasn't hard to find him. His posts were everywhere: vacation photos, random updates. I clicked through them, sick to my stomach with every scroll. And then I found it: a picture of him and Sarah, standing too close on a beach, grinning at the camera like they were in their own little world. The caption was the final nail in the coffin: another unforgettable trip with my favorite person. #best times. I stared at that picture for what felt like forever. The weight of it all started to sink in. This wasn't just about Sarah and Tom. This was about my whole damn life, the life I thought I knew. The house we built, the years we spent together, all of it was built on a foundation of lies. And I couldn't unsee any of it now. I took a breath and closed the laptop, sitting there in the quiet of my living room. I had everything I needed: proof, photos, evidence. But the anger that burned in me wasn't just about what Sarah had done. It was about everything, everything I thought was real, everything that was now a lie. I had a plan now. I wasn't going to confront her directly, not yet. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. I would destroy Tom instead. He'd be the one to pay the price for this. He'd lose everything just like she would. Only I wasn't going to get my hands dirty. I'd let someone else handle it. Let the company do the work for me. I wasn't sure how far this would go, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Sarah and Tom walk away from this unscathed. Not after everything they'd done. Not after everything I had lost. When Sarah mentioned the company dinner, something about the way she said it caught my attention. "It's really important for work relationships, Mike," she had insisted. She almost pleaded with me to come. I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but the insistence felt off, like she was trying to hide something, or maybe make up for something. Either way, I agreed to go, mostly out of curiosity. I wasn't going to sit around, waiting for the truth to drop in my lap. I'd go, watch, listen. Maybe I'd learn something else. The venue was one of those upscale places with polished wood floors and dim lighting that made everything look important. Like you could tell just by stepping inside that the people here were trying to impress each other. I wasn't a fan of these kinds of places, but it seemed to fit Sarah's world, not mine. Still, I followed her inside, tried to act normal, even though I felt anything but. The moment we sat down, I noticed Tom. He was across the table, of course, looking sharp in his suit, trying way too hard to stand out. He was talking louder than anyone else, holding court with the boss and a few other senior managers, acting like he was the star of the show. It wasn't hard to see that he was working the room, laughing a little too much, cracking jokes that weren't really funny but still got him attention. Sarah didn't seem to care. She barely looked at me, her eyes on her phone under the table, probably texting Tom. My stomach churned, but I kept my mouth shut. The conversation around me buzzed in the background as I studied Tom, listening to him hold forth on some client deal I didn't care about. But then something caught my ear. He was talking about a project, a big one, and how he'd worked his magic to save it at the last minute. It was clear he was trying to take credit for more than he'd actually done. And it hit me. This was the moment. This was where I could start to put the wheels in motion. I casually leaned over to Sarah, pretending to check something on my phone, but I made sure to drop my voice low enough so Tom could hear. "I heard you had a hand in that deal with Philips Electronics," I said, loud enough for him to catch. "Wasn't that the one you almost lost because of poor numbers?" Sarah glanced at me, her expression freezing for a second. But I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Tom. He immediately shifted in his chair, the way people do when they know they've been caught off guard but are trying not to let it show. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said quickly, his voice tightening, though he tried to laugh it off. "I got the deal done, didn't I?" "Yeah, you did," I said, nodding like I was giving him credit. "But I heard it wasn't exactly on the up and up. Maybe you should double-check your numbers before you start taking credit for saving the project. You know how these things can get tricky." I watched the blood drain from his face. He didn't like that, not one bit, but he didn't have a choice but to smile through it. He cleared his throat, trying to shift the conversation back to something else, but I could see it. He was rattled. He was trying to keep his cool, but the cracks were showing. As the dinner went on, I kept up the pressure, casually slipping in a few more digs about his work, dropping hints that I knew more than I should. Each time, Tom's composure slipped just a little more. I didn't need to outright accuse him. He was digging his own grave. He was too desperate to prove himself, and I was too far gone to feel any guilt about it. Meanwhile, Sarah's discomfort was becoming more and more obvious. She shifted in her seat. She kept glancing down at her plate or at her phone, avoiding my gaze like it was burning through her. I didn't miss it. The way her fingers fidgeted with her napkin, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes when I spoke to her. It told me everything I needed to know. At one point, she excused herself to use the bathroom, but I knew it wasn't for that. She was running away from me, from the conversation we both knew was coming. The only problem was, she couldn't avoid it forever. Tom was still blustering away, pretending like he hadn't just been put on the spot. He was good at this, good at playing the part of the guy everyone was supposed to admire. But I saw through it. I saw the cracks. I saw how scared he was, how far he'd gone to keep his little secret hidden. It was like watching a man drown in slow motion. When Sarah returned, she barely acknowledged me, keeping her eyes glued to the menu, and the rest of the evening stretched out like a long, drawn-out confession. I didn't push her. I didn't confront her, not yet, but I could see the guilt eating away at her, little by little. By the end of the night, I knew one thing for sure. She was uncomfortable. The kind of uncomfortable that comes when you know someone else knows what you've been up to. She couldn't hide from me forever. As the dinner wrapped up and people stood to leave, I took one last look at Tom. He was grinning and laughing, trying to keep up appearances, but I could see the anxiety in his eyes now. He wasn't as untouchable as he thought. I knew how to bring him down, and I would. But it wasn't going to be tonight. Tonight, I let him walk away just for now. Sarah didn't say a word on the drive home. She didn't need to. I knew what she was thinking. She could feel it in the air, just like I could. The power had shifted. She couldn't pretend anymore. I didn't say anything either. I didn't have to. We both knew. The game had changed, and it was just a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The phone rang the next day while I was elbow-deep in engine grease. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway, wiping my hands on a rag and stepping outside the shop for some quiet. "Michael." It was Sarah's boss, Keith. His voice was smooth but with a tightness I didn't like. "Yeah, this is Mike. What's up?" There was a long pause before he spoke again, like he was choosing his words carefully. "I'm hearing some concerns about Tom. His professionalism has come into question, and, well, I wanted to ask if you'd heard anything about it." I let out a slow breath. So it had already started. I dropped a few hints at that dinner, and now the rumors were spilling out. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. "Don't know what you're talking about," I said, keeping my tone casual, even though my stomach was in knots. "I haven't heard anything." Keith didn't seem convinced, but he pressed on anyway. "Look, Mike, I'm not saying you're involved, but if you know anything, it would be helpful to know." Tom's future here is uncertain. I get it, but I don't know anything, Keith. Not a word. There was a pause, then a sharp sigh. Right? Well, if you do hear anything, let me know. This could get messy. I hung up, my hands still trembling. I wasn't about to admit anything. Not yet. But it was done now. Tom's future at the company was already hanging by a thread, and I had nothing to do with it, except for the seed I'd planted. I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction in that. When Sarah came home later that evening, I was waiting for her. She walked in, her heels clicking against the floor, but when she saw me sitting in the living room, her whole demeanor shifted. I could feel the tension in the air before she said a word. Mike! Her voice was tentative, like she knew something was off but wasn't sure how to approach it. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her for a long beat, my mind racing. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to break down. But I was done pretending. I had everything I needed, and I wasn't backing down. I know, I finally said. It was simple, but it felt like a weight lifted off my chest. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. Sarah froze. She looked like I'd slapped her. "Know what?" Her voice was low, almost scared. "I know about the affair, Sarah," I said calmly, my voice steady. "I know about Tom. I know about the hidden phone, the texts. I know it all." Her face went pale, her eyes flicking to the door like she was about to run. But she didn't. She just stood there, staring at me, trying to compose herself. "Mike, listen." "No," I held up my hand, cutting her off before she could make any excuses. "You don't get to explain this away. I've seen the messages. I know how long this has been going on. I know everything." She tried to take a deep breath, like she was gathering her thoughts, but I wasn't going to give her the space to lie her way out of it. "You don't understand. It was a mistake. Just one. Don't." My voice was sharp now, the calm I'd been holding on to cracking. "It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't just a one-time thing. You've been hiding this from me for months. I've seen the way you look at him, the way you talk about him, the trips, the late nights. It's all been a lie, Sarah." I watched her eyes widen, the reality starting to sink in. "Mike, I didn't let her finish. I've already taken care of it," I said, my tone colder now. "Tom's career is already in freefall. I made sure of that. People are talking, and it's only a matter of time before they figure out why." Sarah's face drained of color as the realization hit her. She took a step back, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find the words to defend herself. But there was nothing. No excuse that could fix this. "Mike, please," she whispered, her voice shaking now. "It wasn't like you think. It's not." "No," I interrupted again, my voice firm. "You don't get to tell me what it was like. You don't get to rewrite this. You've been lying to me, Sarah. And worse, you've been lying to yourself. You've done this behind my back, and now it's too late to take it back." She sank down onto the couch, her hands trembling in her lap, and for a second, I thought she might cry. But the thing was, I didn't care anymore. Not the way I used to. I didn't feel the need to comfort her, to make her feel better about the mess she'd made. Instead, I just stood there, watching her, waiting. She had no idea what it was like to feel so small, so powerless. To have everything you thought you knew ripped out from under you, piece by piece. "I don't even recognize you anymore," I said, finally breaking the silence. "The woman I married wouldn't do this. The woman I loved would never betray me like this. But here we are." Her lips parted, and I saw the tears start to fill her eyes, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Couldn't. Not after everything. Not after the way she'd shattered everything we built. "You're right," she whispered, barely audible. "I've destroyed everything." There it was, the first time she'd admitted it. The truth, finally. But it was too late. There was no fixing this. Not now. Not after everything she'd done. I turned away, not wanting to stay another minute in that suffocating silence. "I'm done, Sarah. I'm done." She didn't try to stop me. She didn't say another word as I walked out the door, but I knew she felt the weight of my departure. She knew what she had lost. And in that moment, I knew I had the power. The power to walk away. The power to finally let go. The first few days after I walked out were the hardest. I packed up my stuff, took what I could, and left Sarah to figure things out on her own. I didn't feel guilty about leaving, not one bit, but there was something about the silence that followed that made it hard to breathe. The house felt too big, too empty now. The memories of us, of everything I thought we were, hung in the air like dust I couldn't shake off. Sarah didn't waste any time trying to reach out. The first call came the morning after I left. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear her voice. Not yet. The second call came a few hours later. Then the text started, a steady stream of apologies, of pleas for me to come back, to work things out. I could see her desperation through the words, but I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. I deleted the texts without reading them. I stayed with my brother, Paul, for a few weeks. His place was small, but it was quiet. Exactly what I needed. Paul didn't ask many questions. He knew what had happened, knew I wasn't coming back, and didn't bother trying to convince me otherwise. He kept the fridge stocked with beer and didn't bring up Sarah, which was just what I wanted. I spent my days in the shop, working on cars, the rhythmic hum of the engines giving me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. I didn't have to think about Sarah or the mess I'd left behind. I just focused on fixing things the way I always did. It was easier than dealing with the wreckage of my personal life. Danny called me a few days later just to check in. When he asked how I was holding up, I just gave him a short, simple answer. I'm fine. He didn't buy it. Man, you sure about that? You look like a guy who's trying to swallow a fistful of nails. I laughed, though it felt fake. I'm good. Just taking it one day at a time. Well, you did the right thing, Mike. You can't let her walk all over you. She made her bed, and now she's got a lie in it. I knew Danny was trying to make me feel better, but his words didn't really help. I didn't care about Sarah anymore. Not in the way I once did. But something about the whole thing still felt like a weight I couldn't fully shake. I don't know, man, I said, leaning against the workbench. It just feels like a damn mess. Like everything I thought I knew about her, about us. It was all a lie. It's hard to look back at it and not feel like a fool. You weren't the one who fucked up, Mike. Danny shot back. Don't start taking the blame for her shit. I sighed, wiping my hands on a rag. Yeah, I guess you're right. But the truth was I was too far gone. Too far down the road to care about what Sarah had to say or how she felt anymore. She'd burned the bridge, and I wasn't about to go back across it. A few days later, I got another call. This time it was from Keith, Sarah's boss. I wasn't surprised. If Tom's career was hanging by a thread, it was only a matter of time before Keith came knocking on mine. Mike, hey, it's Keith. I was wondering if we could meet. I'd like to talk to you about a few things. I wasn't interested in hearing anything that man had to say. But then, I remembered what I'd been working on, my shop, the business, the clients I was trying to build up. It wouldn't hurt to meet, if only to see if I could use the conversation to my advantage. I'm free tomorrow, I said, trying to sound casual, even though I knew what this was really about. What time works for you? There was a pause before Keith answered. How about noon? At that place on 4th Street. I'll buy you lunch. I agreed, hung up, and found myself pacing the shop again. I wasn't sure what Keith wanted to talk about, but I had a pretty good guess. He was going to try to smooth things over with me. Maybe he thought he could get me to keep quiet about everything that had gone down between Sarah and Tom. Or maybe he was just hoping to pick up the pieces of his company's mess. Either way, I wasn't planning on making it easy for him. The next day, I showed up at the diner, the same place Sarah and I had gone for coffee countless times. I didn't sit right away, just leaned against the counter, looking out the window, watching the world go by. I didn't feel nervous. If anything, I felt numb, detached, like I was watching someone else's life from a distance. Keith finally walked in, looking as put together as always. He smiled when he saw me, extending his hand like we were old pals. I shook it, but I wasn't about to pretend like everything was fine. Not anymore. Mike, thanks for meeting with me. I know this has been a difficult time for you, he started, sitting down across from me. I just wanted to clear the air and, well, maybe work out some things moving forward. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I waited, letting him talk. I could already feel the wheels turning in my head. This wasn't about clearing the air. This was about damage control. But I wasn't here to play nice. I'm not looking for anything from you, Keith, I said, leaning back in my seat, my voice steady. I'm just here to make sure we both understand where we stand. Keith looked a little taken aback but recovered quickly. Of course. Look, Mike, we appreciate your understanding, but I do want to offer something. If you're willing to keep things quiet on your end, we'd be open to a partnership, some kind of arrangement that could benefit both of us. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was one of those smiles that people get when they know they've already won. I don't think so, Keith, I said. I'm not interested in your partnership, but I'll keep your offer in mind. I could see the wheels turning in his head, but I wasn't done. You know, Tom's been a real asset to the company, huh? But it seems like his reputation's been shaken a bit. Funny how that happens, isn't it? Keith's face stiffened. He was trying to keep his cool, but I could tell he was rattled. I don't know what you mean, Mike. I think you do, I interrupted. You'll figure it out, though. Don't worry. I stood up, not waiting for his response. I didn't need to hear it. I'd already made my point. Keith knew exactly what I was talking about. And I knew, deep down, that things were already falling apart for Sarah and Tom. I didn't look back as I walked out of the diner, the door closing behind me with a soft chime. The power had shifted. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I met with Keith a few days after the diner. This time, it wasn't just about business or damage control. He had something to offer, a deal. I could see it in his eyes as he slid the papers across the table. The man was a shark, always trying to size up who could be useful to him. And right now, he was trying to buy my silence. It's a generous offer, Mike, Keith said, his voice smooth. In exchange for your discretion, we're willing to offer you a partnership. You'd be on the board, help with some of our mechanics work, and, of course, there's the compensation. We could make it worth your while. Think about it. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch out. I could have easily taken the deal, played along, kept my mouth shut, and secured some extra cash. But something about it didn't sit right with me anymore. It was always the same thing with people like him, always trying to use others to get ahead. I wasn't interested in playing that game. Not anymore. I'm not interested, Keith, I said, my voice steady. I'm done with your company, and I'm done with you. You're just like everyone else in your circle, always looking for ways to use people for your own gain. I don't need that. Keith's face tightened for a moment, the mask slipping. You sure about this? He asked, but it wasn't a question anymore. It was more like a warning. I stood up, leaving the papers on the table. Yeah, I'm sure. I turned and walked out without a second glance, feeling lighter than I had in months. That chapter was closed, and I wasn't going back. As soon as I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. Sarah's name flashed across the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, not sure if I wanted to pick up. I'd ignored every call and text from her for weeks, but something in me felt like it was time to face this. I answered. Mike, she said, her voice quiet, almost tentative. I'm sorry. I know I've messed everything up. I want to fix this. I didn't feel the usual anger or hurt in my chest. Instead, there was this calm, this clarity that I hadn't had before. Sarah, it's over. I'm moving on. There was a pause on the other end. She didn't say anything, but I could hear the crack in her voice. But we can. No, I said, my tone firm but calm. It's done. I've been done for a while. You can't fix what's broken. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. She didn't say anything else, and after a few seconds, I ended the call. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. I stood there for a moment, letting the weight of it settle in. It wasn't relief, not exactly. More like a quiet acceptance. I had no anger left, no resentment. I was free. I smiled to myself as I slipped the phone back in my pocket. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of my life. I wasn't going to let anyone else dictate my worth or my future. Not Sarah. Not Keith. Not anyone. It was my time now, and I was taking it back.